Thanks everyone for attending today's session. We're going to be going through NetSuite's multi-book functionality, which provides the ability to better manage industry or even country-specific accounting and compliance requirements. My name is Jim Doyle. I'm a senior solution consultant here at Protelo. I'm also a NetSuite certified ERP consultant and administrator. I've been with the Protelo team for almost a year now, and my job is really to meet with companies, understand requirements, and align them with the right NetSuite solutions based on those needs and priorities. Before coming to Protelo, I did pretty much the same thing for NetSuite directly. I supported manufacturing, distribution, service customers, including plenty of large multi-subsidiary international companies. That's really where I had my first exposure to multi-book, seeing it save a lot of headaches, got my multi-book certification, and so today we're really focusing on that, those secondary accounting books, but feel free as we're going through this to ask any other questions that you have about NetSuite or otherwise. We like to keep these things as interactive as possible. So I'll kind of pause periodically throughout and address those questions. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to start with a quick overview of some of the challenges that multi-book's intended to address. And then I'll give a quick overview of what multi-book is, what sort of features it provides, and the capabilities it'll extend for you. And then we'll walk through a demonstration, take a look at some of the configuration, see how it impacts our transactions and reporting. That's where we'll spend most of the session today. And then I do want to take some time at the end to talk about some additional considerations, some other close solutions, some points on implementation, some things to keep in mind as you're looking at this as a potential solution. And we'll make sure to save some time at the end for Q&A. But like Sari said, feel free to put those in the chat, and I'll pause throughout and address those as we see them. All right, so here are some of the common challenges we hear that can be addressed with multi-book. And most commonly, it's companies that have multiple subsidiaries, especially foreign subs that are subject to multiple accounting standards. So if I have a London-based business, then it could be subject to US GAAP, IFRS, local UK statutory or tax laws. And then when you add on the layer of complexity of having to potentially report in multiple currencies, it can be really challenging and inefficient to maintain parallel books. Or if you're waiting till the end of the period to replicate data entry and post in any adjustments, now you've lost real-time visibility. So that's probably the most common challenge we hear from clients, though there are also situations where companies will have complex revenue recognition requirements. With the new or newish ASC 606, multi-book can really help you achieve compliance without disrupting your business, because one, it allows you to separate your order to cash processes by book with advanced revenue management, and it can help you improve communications with stakeholders by showing them the impact of new accounting rules and the tax laws, so they could see the before and after versions of your financial reports, both real time and based on a single set of transactions. So how does multi-book get this done? Essentially, it allows you to maintain multiple accounting books, all based on the same set of financial transactions. So transactions in the system are posting to two books or multiple books, and they can post differently depending on the book-specific rules that you define. This makes it much easier to generate your financial reporting packages that you need to be compliant. So you can have books for your different those different accounting standards: GAAP versus stat, tax, special regulatory reporting, all without losing that transaction detail, because it's all in your ERP. And then you can also report in multiple currencies for a single subsidiary. So I could generate a report for my UK subsidiary in USD and GBP for local UK tax law. That's one that we hear all the time, is the child subsidiary needs to report in two currencies. So here's some additional capabilities and benefits. I mentioned the mapping rules, and we'll look at these in the demo, but what those do is allow you to create a transaction and have it post efficiently to all your books in accordance with the appropriate accounting standard. You can also create these revenue recognition and expense amortization rules, which make it much easier to avoid errors related to differences between ASC and IFRS. You can set those up at the book level so that it'll treat those, that revenue recognition or those amortizations differently depending on how you set that up. You can also run financial consolidations on a per book basis, execute certain period close tasks per book, including financial close, and also create book-specific journal entries without impacting your other books. I already mentioned the currency management, so your accounting departments can record transactions in those book-specific currencies, functional currencies, and then the system is going to automatically calculate the impact of exchange rates. It's going to include all your realized and unrealized gains and losses in compliance with ASC 830 and any other foreign currency management regulations. And you can also control all this with book-specific roles and permissions. A lot of NetSuite customers don't realize that this is available. A lot are having to export NetSuite financial data, doing these things manually in another tool. They don't realize that Multi-Book provides a much more efficient and controlled framework to accomplish this all within your ERP and make sure that you're compliant without having to add all sorts of people to your accounting team. Let's go ahead. I think that was my last slide. Yeah, for the demonstration. So let's go ahead and transition over into the demonstration. So I'm logged into my NetSuite. Sari, just come off mute and let me know if you can't see my NetSuite if I'm still on my slide, but I'll go ahead and proceed. Okay, perfect.
You look great.
And actually, let me pause for questions before I get into this real quick. I want to see if we have any. Looks like we have one. Okay, and maybe I addressed it. I have. Do you need Multi-Book to transact in foreign currencies even if you don't need to generate reports in them? The answer to that is no. You can transact in foreign currencies. There's foreign currency management in NetSuite Core and OneWorld. This Multi-Book would be if you need to generate those subsidiary level reports in multiple currencies versus just transacting in them, if that makes sense. That was one question.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, and for anyone who may have joined late, there is a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, a little button. So if you want to click that at any point and add your question there, we'll be happy to answer it. Thank you.
Definitely. All right. And I actually did just see a quick question. Is there a difference between OneWorld and Multi-Book? I'll get into this a little bit later. I have a couple slides after the demo on some of the licensing requirements. The short answer is that yes, Multi-Book requires OneWorld, but it is a different functionality, and the licensing really depends on the number of accounting books that you need, and that is going to be a function of your country currency licenses for OneWorld. So, for example, actually, this is helpful. I'm here in the demo account. So, in my NetSuite account, I have multi-level subsidiary hierarchy, and so I of course have to have my country currency licenses for each of these child level subsidiaries to maintain those financial records in Euro for France. Now, if I need to maintain a statutory book in USD for France as well, then I would need a country currency for France, US dollar. And so it's more a function of your country currency licenses that fall under OneWorld. There isn't a Multi-Book line item that you would see on a estimate or anything like that. And I'll get into some of that later too. And that's go ahead, Sari.
No, sorry, Jim, I was just going to add, for in layman's terms, OneWorld is licensing and Multi-Book is functionality. So One is, you know, a NetSuite item that they allow you to buy, and one is functionality that allows you to do something. So I don't know if that helps with for the non-technical or non-accounting
Definitely.
terms.
Yeah. And you do need one world though in order to implement multi-book.
Yes, yes, but that's the difference.
Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get started then. So first thing I'll point out is I'm on my dashboard here. We have all our subsidiaries. You'll see my filter, my dashboard filter. I can adjust the accounting book that we're looking at. So I have I have 3 secondary books set up in addition to my primary accounting book. So kind of like how you can toggle between subsidiaries with one world. Now I can toggle between accounting books and it'll update my KPIs and my dashboard and things like that, right? You'll see this update. Now, as far as enabling features, and the first question is like, do I already have it turned on or do I have it set up in my system? So I'll just quickly point out, if you go into your enable features, then you're gonna see a section in your accounting on multi-book accounting, and it's going to have some different check boxes here. I'm going to talk about adjustment only books after the demonstration because this is sort of a more limited point functionality that may not rise to the level of what we're about to get into here. But this is a quick way to check and see if you already have multi-book provisioned or turned on, and just a quick check that you can run in your own account if you have that question. So here is a list of the accounting books that we have set up in this account. Primary accounting book, of course, everything's going to post to that. And then we have statutory book, and then a local currency. So this is for my Mexican subsidiary, but I need to report in USD as well as peso, and then an IFRS book for full adoption. So you can create these different books. For my statutory book, this is going to apply to the following subsidiaries. So for each of your books, you'll define the subsidiaries it applies to. You'll be able to see the primary book base currency as defined on your subsidiary and your accounting book record. But then you're also able to define a separate base currency that's different from that. This is going to be that statutory book base currency, functional currency. So here I can have for Germany, or let's use my UK example. Primary book is going to post in that local currency, but I'm also going to have a set of books that is in USD as well. So that's the first kind of setup, is you set up your different accounting books. And then you're also going to have your global mapping rules. Or there's 2 types of mapping rules. First, global mapping rules are going to, and this is how you can set the system up to take a single transaction and maybe post it to 2 different types of accounts, depending on the accounting book. So here, this mapping rule is going to say for my statutory book and my French subsidiary, anytime we're posting to this source account, it's instead in my statutory book going to hit my destination account or target account. So when I create a transaction in NetSuite in my primary book, it may be hitting this. In my statutory, it'll hit the target destination account. A little bit similar to how you set up like the expense allocation rules. Don't muddy the 2, but I think that's a good comparison. So single transaction is going to post to 2 different accounts in the accounting books, depending on the mapping rules I set up. I can also set up item account mappings. These are going to apply to any items that are tied to specific asset accounts or their source account. And this comes up a lot with, again, ASC 606, revenue recognition, having to set up different books depending on how IFRS versus GAAP says that you need to recognize revenue or manage deferred revenue. Here, for my statutory book in France, instead of posting to a deferred revenue license backlog account, it's going to reroute that and post it to advanced payments from customer account. And we'll see this in a financial statement here in a second. But again, primary book, it's posting to one account. And then in my secondary book, or in this case, my statutory book, it's posting to another. So you can start to see how between those mapping rules that you'll define those, and then they'll apply to certain subsidiaries and accounting books. And now we're not having to take that transaction and manually at the end of the period adjust it in a local or in a statutory financial statement. The system can just post it to both. It's all real time, and you're also going to have that real time visibility. Now, a couple of the other sort of components of this is fixed assets, for example. So fixed assets, I can create book-specific depreciation schedules. And so sort of like assigning alternate depreciation methods, if anyone here is using fixed assets, when you create your asset types, you're going to have your accounting method that it's going to use for your primary accounting book. But you can also define other methods for your statutory books. So depending on how France treats leasehold improvement type assets, I may see different depreciation methods or different asset lifetimes or residual values or even accounts. So again, it's going to be book specific treatment of fixed assets and depreciations, which if you need to do that, then, and you're doing it outside the system and you have a good amount of assets, that can quickly become death by 1,000 paper cuts with that, manually keeping up with that. And then you're also opening yourself up to risk because you're trusting humans and humans make errors sometimes. So let the system and the mappings do that for you. Here's an asset record. We can see with that leasehold improvements, it's been assigned that straight line depreciation. Now, depending on the subsidiary, so this is for our Mexican subsidiary, it's only going to apply those, alternate depreciation methods that are defined or that are tied to an accounting book that's associated with that subsidiary. So even though I have a whole bunch of different tax methods defined for leasehold improvements, because my Mexican subsidiary only has a tie to this accounting book, it's only going to pull that in to this asset record. So it still helps you kind of control that. It doesn't rely on you to go in and manually assign those alternate methods. It'll just check and see if the asset's tied to a sub that is using one of those accounting books. It'll do it for you. Another area where we see it is with expense amortization. So like I said, you can set up book-specific amortization schedules. Here's a bill for a prepaid rent expense, and it's for, and so we have our amortization schedule here that is we're going to use on our primary accounting book, but I can also assign alternate amortization schedules that are book specific. Before I do that, let me just open up the GL impact of this vendor bill. And so you can see all the accounting books that it's posting to. So because our Mexican subsidiary has 2 secondary books, it's going to post to, of course, our primary accounting in USD, local in peso, and then IFRS in peso. So a single transaction line in NetSuite is really posting to 3 separate accounting books. This is something that you'd have to do manually or as an adjustment if you weren't using multi-book. You'd probably have to do it outside the system. Going back to that bill, the amortization schedule. So once we have our primary accounting book amortization schedule, if I go into my update amortization at the top of the page, I can see the other accounting books that this subsidiary is using, and I can assign different amortization schedules or templates, different start end dates, different residual percentages. And then when I go to create my amortization journal entries at the end of the month to amortize those expenses, you're going to see both of those. So I have my 13 schedule, which is tied to that local currency, that GAAP book. So, but if I switch to my primary accounting book, I'm going to see that go to my schedule number 12. So when I'm doing this at the end of the month, I'm going to post all my amortizations by accounting book, really. And you can use your other filters as well. Same. Oh, and I'm going to pause and just see if we have any questions. I get into a little bit of a roll once we get into this. Okay. I see. Can subs share a secondary book? Yes. Yep. You can assign a secondary book to, well, you'll create your secondary book, and then you can assign multiple subsidiaries to that. And each of those subsidiaries could have a different functional currency too, like that one that I pulled up at the beginning here. So here's that statutory book again, and we can see the different subs that are assigned and the base currency for that statutory book. And then I see, would you ever need multi-book if you don't have foreign subsidiaries? That is a really good question. If you are looking to adopt new compliance requirements, I use the example for ASC 606. That's the most common one. Advanced revenue management, things like that, then certainly you can use multi-book to maintain those separate books under different accounting standards until you've implemented the new ASC 606 or lease accounting 842. It's usually it's usually just about compliance if you don't have any foreign subsidiaries and adopting new requirements. And let me know, Sari, if we have any. I have my eye on my chat here, but I don't know how many potential streams we have that questions could be coming in on. So let me know if I miss any.
No problem. Guys, again, feel free to use that Q&A below. If you have a comment or a question or just the chat, that's fine as well. So we're happy to take your questions. As Jim said, we want this to be interactive. So please feel free to let us know what you're interested in, what brought you in today, anything like that. Please go ahead and enter it in the chat or the Q&A, and we're really happy to hear, what's driving the interest.
Definitely.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thanks, Sari. Yeah, and then the last transaction I'll hit is the book-specific journal. So you're still going to be able to make your adjustments to these secondary books manually if you don't have mapping set up, or of course there's a thousand reasons you need to go in and make a journal entry, but you're able to do it per accounting book, and then it'll only allow you to select the subsidiary that again has been tied back to that secondary book. So there is that level of control there. Now for the reporting. So when you have multi-book enabled and you have these different accounting books set up, you're going to have some additional filters down on all your standard financial reports and statements. So here's our income statement. You all should be kind of relatively familiar with the subsidiary, the ability to segment this out by class, department, location, all those different filters. Now you're also going to have an accounting book filter. So I can adjust this to, if I select my statutory book, or actually let's go with local currency, it's going to adjust my subsidiary context again, because it's going to help me by returning the subs that are tied to the accounting book. And if it's multiple, then I can view it at a consolidated, or I can view it at a child level basis as well. And so now I can see this Mexican subsidiary under that local currency, because that's what we're using for that accounting book. And if I switch this to primary accounting book, it's going to adjust that. So now I can see it in USD again for that Mexican subsidiary. You can view these side by side as well. So here's a multi-book income statement where I can see, again, we have our two accounting books down here, so I can compare and check any variances and just proof my mappings mostly. So I can see for our French subsidiary, we have our primary book, and they're both in euro. So this is a good example of where you can use multi-book and the mappings versus needing it for the foreign currency management specifically. Like here, if you remember, we had all those mappings set up. So for my primary accounting book, that I'm reporting under one standard, I'm going to be hitting all these accounts, and we see that there's a variance there with our statutory book. that statutory book, those may be posting to different accounts. So those mappings were rerouting the quantities based on those source and target accounts, either on the global mappings or on the item specific account mappings. So it's all automated. It's all going on in the background while you transact. And you also, same's going to apply. You'll have a multi-book balance sheet. I believe that those are the two additional multi-book income and multi-book balance sheet. But again, on all your other financial statements and reports, you're going to have the ability to filter by accounting book too. All right, just a couple slides to wrap up here, and then we'll hit any remaining questions. So a couple things to consider here. Coming back to the licensing, and this is something that your account manager, your NetSuite account manager can help you navigate as well, is you do require OneWorld, NetSuite OneWorld, and then the requisite number of country currency licenses. So remember, like I said, UK sub, if I want to have UK and US dollar and UK and GBP, then that would be two separate country currency licenses. So it's per unique combination in order to have those accounting books. NetSuite allows up to 4 active secondary books. You can mark books inactive and repurpose books if you need to, but you can only have 4 at a time. And again, you can share those across subsidiaries. So I haven't had a client that needed more than that, but keep that in mind. And then historical transaction processing, HTP. This is a major part of implementation if you are a NetSuite customer that has historical data in the system. And this is like a step-by-step checklist where you're going in and essentially bringing in the historical transactions and applying them to your new secondary accounting book, your historical periods there. And if you have mapping set up, things like that, then it'll make sure that you're bringing that over. And it's again, step-by-step controlled. It is complex, and you do need to make sure that it's being done right. This is something that Protelo would be an awesome resource for you to leverage. We have not just the advanced revenue management certified consultants, but also multi-book certified. There's a certification process that solution providers have to go through to ensure that they're able to implement multi-book, including training, and because this HTP process really needs to be done right. And so keep that in mind. Make sure that you're using a resource that has that ability and that knowledge. Challenges best solved with other solutions. So once you turn multi-book on, you really can't turn it off. You can mark accounting books inactive, but you have transactions in there, dependent records. So you can't delete unless you delete out all that transactional data in order to kind of work your way backwards. I haven't seen that. But keep in mind, before you turn it on and before you start to go down this road, make sure that it is the solution that's going to meet your needs. If you just need to transact in multiple currencies, that's just foreign currency management, OneWorld sort of core. It's not really NetSuite Multi-Book. If you have subsidiaries with different fiscal year ends, multi-calendar feature can allow you to set those up. Doesn't require multi-book. Statutory chart of accounts. This is one where if you need to create, almost a completely different chart of account, you can use accounting context. That's something that's I'm not sure. I don't think it's part of OneWorld. I think that's, again, core financials, but you can create accounting contexts for different requirements from that standpoint. If you need, we looked at fixed assets. If you need to create these different depreciation methods, but you don't need complete financial statements for those different alternate depreciation methods, then you can just use alternate depreciation schedules for your fixed asset management. It's only when you need to generate reports because the alternate depreciation schedules are non-posting. Multi-book actually posts them to accounting books. So Again, keep that in mind that there is some limited functionality there just in the fixed assets module. And then differing financial statement layouts. That's one question that we get is need to set these up differently. That would really just be your financial report builder. That's not really going to fall under multi-book. Multi-book, you can set up mapping so it'll post differently and different book specific schedules, but it's really not going to adjust the layout. One other question I get sometimes, it's not on here, but I'll add it before we make this available, is class department location. Those mapping rules that you set up are not going to allocate or reassign your segments, your reporting segments. It's just going to map to the accounts. So multi-book wouldn't be used if you need to reclassify class department location between your different accounting books. That is one that does come up sometimes. So Sari, I'll add that in here before we make this available afterwards. And then I talked about make sure you do have the right resource. Like I said, we have certified ERP consultants that are ARM certified, multi-book certified. So tried and tested, and we have extremely experienced consultants. So this is a project that you really do want some hand-holding with. Once you go through that HTP process, once you activate that book, you can't go back and do any more HTP. So you have to make sure that everything is brought in from a historical transaction perspective. Everything's mapped right, it's all set right before you activate the book, or else you have to mark that book inactive and kind of start over. So definitely engage a resource for this, and Protelo's there for you. Talk to your account manager or Sari, and we can certainly help out with this project. And some contact information. And I think now we'll just see if there's any more questions in the chat.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
While we wait for some of those to come in, and again, guys, just down in the Q&A, you can write if you didn't see that there. Thank you guys so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We try to do these webinars once a month or once every other month, but if you have any suggested topics, we love to hear those as well. So feel free to email me, or again, write that in the chat or whatever you'd like, but would love to hear what you guys are interested in. Jim, any other questions in there?
I did have one question just about sort of repurposing one world license. It's if we sell our foreign business, can we transfer that license to another country currency? How does that work? I would say talk to your project manager or whoever your implementation partner is, your account manager, because it would really depend on the level of transactions you have for that foreign business that you now don't need in NetSuite, and you want to take that license, and maybe you're acquiring a business in India. It's really going to depend. You can mark your country currencies licenses in NetSuite aren't specific to a country currency combination. That being said, once you start to transact, it's not going to let you delete that subsidiary which has that base currency because there are all the dependent transactions in the system. So you're almost having to go in, and similar to like with the HTTP with multi-book, you're having to go in and delete out and clear out all sorts of dependent transactions just so that you can transfer the license. That may or may not make sense, depending on how much history is in there. But that's probably best, addressed on sort of a case-by-case basis, I would say. And I think, Sari, that's all that I have. Yeah, sure. Yeah, to echo Sari, thanks everyone for coming and participating. I always enjoy doing these, and yeah, the great questions, the more the better. So come back to the next one too, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. So we'll be sending this out to everyone who attended today. If you think of any questions after that, please feel free to email me, or if you have an additional contact at Protelo, feel free to email them as well. We are here to help. So thank you all and have a great day.